In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can select components of a structural project and modify them in Autodesk Revit. Currently, I'm on my home screen. I'm going to open up a specific file here. So I'll select Models Open. I'll browse to my class folder, and then I will open up Structural Select. Let's start with a review of some selection techniques in Autodesk Revit. To select one item, I can click on it. If I want to select multiple items, I can hold the Control key and continue clicking to add more items. I can hold the Shift key to remove items when I click on them, and I can click out in space to deselect everything. I can hover over a wall and press the Tab key to select a chain of walls. There we go. I can also use a window or a crossing. So a window occurs when I click and drag to the right. Only those things completely within the window will be selected. A crossing occurs when I click from right to left. Those things within the window are selected, but so is anything else that is crossed over. I can also use my filter tool. So let's say I created a window around everything. Then either down here in my status bar or up top here on my ribbon, I can select filter. Here I can see all the items that are selected. If I wanted to modify some structural columns, I can click check none and then select structural columns. Then click OK. Now just my structural columns are selected. And once again, I can click in an empty area to deselect them. Another way that I can select several items of the same type is through my right-click menu. I'll zoom in here and select one of my structural columns. In my properties, I can see that it is a 10 by 49. If I want to select all of the 10 by 49 columns, I can right-click on Screen, choose Select All Instances Visible in View. If I look at my status bar, I can see that it has selected 22 columns of the same size. Now that we're refreshed on selection techniques, let's modify some objects. I'm going to go ahead and close this file, and then I'm going to open from our class folder a file called Structural Editing. Here we can see a horizontal grid line A and a vertical grid line 1 and a structural column at their intersection. To begin with, we are going to copy the vertical grid line 1 and the column to the right. We're going to create 3 more sets 24 feet apart. So I'm going to zoom in here and click on the structural column, hold Control, and click on the grid to select both. I will then choose my copy command from the modify section here. Then I will click a base point. I'll just pick a point somewhere here on grid line 1. Then I will move to the right, and when I get to 24 feet, I'll just simply click. And I'll do that again. And then one more time. And you could also type 24 and hit enter instead of moving your mouse to exactly 24 feet. I can see the columns and the grid lines all copied. The grid lines need to be renumbered. So this one I will click twice on to renumber to 2, then 3, and then 4. Next, I'm going to copy grid line A and the 4 columns into 3 additional rows. So I'm going to use a window selection. I'll just click and drag from left to right to get the grid line and the 4 columns. Once again, I will select my copy command. I'll pick a base point somewhere here on grid A, bring it down 24 feet, then another 24 feet, and finally 24 feet one more time. And then I'll relabel these. So this will be B, C, and D. Then I'm going to move the structural column up here at A1 to the left 6 feet. So I'll select the column, select the move command this time. For my base point, I'll pick a point somewhere on grid line 1, and then I'll move it to the left until I have 6 feet, and then I will click to place it. Next, we're going to rotate grid line 1 so that it matches the recently moved column here. I'm going to select grid line 1, and then I'm going to choose the rotate tool here in the modify panel. The center of the rotation is most likely at the midpoint of this grid line. I want to place this at the intersection of D1, so I'm going to select the place button here in the options bar, and then I will zoom in and I will click at the intersection of D1. Then I'm going to specify my original rotation angle. I'm going to come up and click at the intersection of A and 1. Then I'm going to come over and click at the midpoint of the column that I recently moved. Now we can see the grid line updates, and we can see each of the columns, since they were locked onto that grid line, moved along with the grid line. Next, we are going to rotate the columns to match the new grid. I'm going to select the structural column and then the rotate tool. For my first location, I'm going to click straight to the right along the grid line. Then I'm going to rotate it up until it lines up with the grid line. Then I'll click to place it, and I can see my rotated structural column. I'll repeat that process for the others. Unfortunately, I can't do these all at the same time because they each need the center of the column to be the center of the rotation. So if I selected all 4, they would all 4 rotate around the center of the same column, which would not make sense. I've got one more here to rotate. So again, I'll select it, rotate straight to the right along this grid line, and then straight along the new angled grid line there. Next, we're going to get rid of grid line 4 here, and we're going to mirror grid line 1 over to the right side. So I'm also going to go ahead and delete each of those columns. In order to mirror grid line 1, I need some sort of line or reference plane right down the middle here. So here on the Architecture tab in the Work Plane panel, I'm going to choose Reference Plane, and I'm going to draw one straight down the middle here. I'll go ahead and press Escape to deselect it. Then I will click on it, and then I'm going to use my temporary dimensions to set those to 12 feet so that it's perfectly centered in here. Next, I'm going to select grid line 1 and the 4 columns that are on it. Then in my Modify panel, I will select the Mirror tool where I will pick an axis. And I will simply pick the reference plane that I just created. And then if I zoom in and get a closer look, I can see that I mirrored the columns as well. I just need to update the grid bubble to say 4. Next, I'm going to add a column and create a circular pattern of it. So up top here on grid A3, I'm going to copy this column 15 feet to the right. So I'll select copy, pick a base point somewhere on grid 3, and then I will click once I get over to 15 feet. Then I'll press Escape. So next I'm going to create a radial pattern of this column. So I'll go ahead and select it, and then in the Modify panel, choose the Array tool. I'm going to click OK to this message here. I'm going to choose the radial type. I'm going to group and associate these and create 8 of them. I want to select Move to Last. And then I want to adjust the center of my rotation. I can just simply click and drag that grip to the intersection of grid line A and the reference plane created earlier. Then I will specify the angle to fill of 180 degrees and press Enter. And I can now see my pattern of columns. I'll go ahead and hit Enter one more time to accept 8 of these. And then I'll just click away from them. Next, I'm going to add a grid line to the semicircle that was just created. So I'll select the Grid tool, the Pick Lines tool, and then when I hover over this array, you can see that it picks up the arc. I'll just simply click there, and you can see I have my new grid. I'm going to rename this grid here to A1, A.1, And there we can see our modified set of grids and our structural columns. Next, we'll work with some additional modify tools. I'm going to go ahead and close this file and open up another file from our class folder called structural modify. Here you can see a very similar setup to the previous file that I was using. This one now has some structural concrete foundation walls added in as well. As I look closely up here on the north side, I actually want to trim out the portion of the wall in between the two endpoints of the arc. If I were to use my corner trim tool to create a corner, it would delete the rest of the horizontal wall here. So that's not what I want. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to split this into two walls first. So I will use my split element tool. I'll select somewhere here in the middle. Now if I press escape, I can see that these are two individual walls. Now I can use my corner trim to create a corner out of those two and a corner out of those two as well. Finally, I'm going to offset all of these existing walls 4 inches to the outside. Currently, you can see that they're all centered on these grids. But like I said, we're going to move them all 4 inches to the outside. To do that, I'm going to go to the Modify panel and select the Offset tool. I'll make sure it's set to numerical, and I will set my offset value to 4 inches. And I'm going to clear the copy. I don't want to create an offset copy. I actually want to offset the existing ones. So I will come in here close to one of my existing walls, and I want it to offset towards the outside. So when I see it highlighting towards the outside, I'm going to press Tab to highlight the entire chain of walls, then I will click to select them. And you can now see that all of those walls offset 4 inches to the outside. That concludes this look at selecting and editing structural components in Autodesk Revit.